No, you don't need the.
I'm doing legend. He a 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 legend. Welcome to the league. 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 Welcome to the league. To the league. To the league. To the league. To the league of items.
Pike on money. Pike on money. Pike on money. We making pike on money. Payday, about to throw a rack on China. Need some DFS advice, where can I find some? League of Items got the sheet with all the lineups and all the stacks that you need to get to diamond. League of Items!
Getting gold, that's the goal. Keep on winning on a roll. Kill 4 dragons, got soul. Now you got nowhere to go. Teleporting top to bot. Dive your carry on the spot. That's an ace, wreck your base. Wear my crown, we on top.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and I just wanted to make a video about the TSM Team Liquid match. I know that my last video got a ton of views, so I just wanted to show some of the new people, you know, what the channel's mostly about. So, primarily this channel is about League of Legends at DraftKings and betting, and I know in a lot of my videos I sound like my opinion is the only one that's even possible, but it's not, obviously not true. That's not how I actually think about things. I'm just trying to make the best argument that I can for stuff, and sometimes it sounds like I'm being dismissive of other people's points. But if my last video is any indication, I understand what I'm talking about, and I know there are a lot of people out there with different opinions than me that also understand what they're talking about. But the whole point of the video was that there are competing points of view that will fundamentally never agree because they're two different approaches to the game. There were a lot of great comments in the comment section. If you want to learn more about it, check out some of those comments. I think that some of them were pretty good, even if I didn't agree with them. But I mean, some of the comments were just people obviously didn't watch the video or just don't think critically. So that's enough of that. Just wanted to show real quick. I came in third the other day in the LPL LCK slate. I had a 3-3-1 lineup. That was pretty interesting. The only reason why I ran the lineup this way is because it was necessary in order to get Kanavi captain and as many players from JDG as possible into my lineup. Just the way that the salaries lined up, this is how it ended up working out. So I came in third place. I was like 2.5 points from 10 grand, but you know, they had a good lineup, I had a good lineup, and that's just how this stuff goes. So you can't lose sleep over it. But this video is going to be about the mid-season showdown. So I'm going to go through game by game, and I'm going to do a few things. So I'm going to look at the pick ban phase in almost every single game. I'm going to look at the goal differential just to find the point that I want to look at in the match from gol.gg, which is a good website. And then I'll probably also use Leaguepedia at some point just to look at like item builds and stuff like that. But I'm not guaranteeing I'm going to do everything for every single match. It's just that's not how this kind of stuff works. So let's talk about what I thought about the series going into it. So personally, on the Infinity Edge podcast, some people call it a codcast, I thought that TSM had a good chance to win the series. I figured it'd be pretty close, and I think that TSM showed in this series why they had realistic chances of winning this match. I know like the public consensus is that Team Liquid is better because just because. And I think that if anything, this series shows why TSM is a lot better than people thought they were. They've made some horrible decisions during the game that ultimately cost them the series, but let's just go through it and we'll talk about it later on. So another thing that we talked about going into this match was the Huni Alfari matchup, and Huni didn't do himself any favors in this match. he had some spots where he wasn't in good matchups, but in the first game I think he played I think he played really well in the first game. In that Gragas game he was horrible. Yeah, and the Rumble game, that was very difficult. So I think 2 of those games you can kind of chalk up to draft difference. But let's get into the pick ban phase. So first we had TF Rel and Tristana banned. We had Kaisa, Nidalee, and Alistair banned. I think that the Nidalee ban was really interesting. I don't think that Spica is going to play Nidalee blind in this meta because of the potential to get overwhelmed in the jungle, which happens a lot, especially in the LPL. So I'm not surprised that TSM was kind of really focused on getting one of the chem tank junglers, and they first picked Udyr. Udyr is a good pick. Hecarim's also a fine pick, so you're basically just making that trade. I'm not sure if it's really the best thing to do in the world unless you have an opinion on what side of the matchup is better, and I don't think that there's anything showing. I personally don't think that Udyr is much better than Hecarim. I think Hecarim is the better champion overall. So we had a Udyr and Hecarim trade, so we'll give them both check marks for that because it's reasonable, at least. Maybe not optimal, but it's completely fine. Team Liquid picks Orianna against Power of Evil because Power of Evil is one of the best Orianna players in the world, probably. Then the response picks, and it's funny because we just had this discussion with Renekton in drafts, basically. And this is why we talk about it, because TSM picks Renekton blind, knowing that they're going to have to pick a top laner blind. And I don't have any issues like that. I don't have any issues with this, especially when TSM's plan is to go 4-5 with AD carry and support and try to support Renekton as like a pseudo tank. He's not a true tank, but he gets very tanky with the additional follow-up from champions like Seraphine. So we have Renekton, which I think even if you hate Renekton, like at this point, it does make sense. It's just question mark because of, did you have to blind there? And then Renekton into Gnar. I mean, I'm fine with Renekton against Gnar. It gives you a lot of opportunities to win through the top lane potentially. If you're playing around the Gnar passive, if you're TSM and playing around the Gnar passive correctly, once he goes mini, you can dive him under his tower. So if you send Azir top lane with Udyr, I think you have a lot of chances to make a good play there. Then we get Nautilus and Ezreal banned from Team Liquid, and we had Jinx and Senna banned from TSM, which is fine. Team Liquid gets Thresh, which is one of Core JJ's best champions. He's just a very good Thresh player, which is good. And then we had Misfortune Seraphine. So Misfortune Seraphine is a pretty good lane because Make It Rain combos with Seraphine really well to get the extra root. And it's a good bullet time combination. And we saw a lot of good team play, coordinated team play from TSM in this match. So I like this. And then Jhin is the worst champion in League of Legends, so obviously that's an X. I hate Jhin. So we had 4 good picks versus 4 good picks, 1 question mark versus 1 X because Jhin is a horrible champion. If you pick Jhin in professional play, you deserve to lose. Kidding, not kidding. But I think that the inclusion of Seraphine into this composition turns Renekton into a check mark. So personally, I kind of did like what TSM did in the draft, even though you're inviting the criticism of like the Renekton pick. Are there other champions that could have worked in this situation blind? Yes. But against a top laner like Alphari, if you told me, or if you told TSM going into the series that you would get 4 Renekton games against 4 Gnar games from Alphari, I think they probably would have taken that. So whether or not you agree with the decision, I think this is kind of what they wanted to happen in the pick ban phase. So can't really blame them. Let's go to the important part of this game, and this is why I brought up GOL.GG. So I'm looking at the Baron fight, the extended Baron fight, around the 37-minute mark. So let's find that. No, don't do it. Uh-oh. All right, hope you like advertisements. So basically, we can just skip while this is loading up. So TSM obviously had a large lead throughout the game. Got first blood at 4:33. Got both Rift Heralds. Was up 2 dragons to 2 dragons. It was 2 dragons to 2. They get a Baron, which was a good Baron take. They get another dragon to another on Soul Point. And then this was the Baron fight that really kind of made everything go insane in that game. And I'm not saying, I mean, I just think that TSM should have won this game. So let's go. All right, so let's just try to figure out what they were trying to accomplish. And I'll remove my face for this. All right, and we'll slow it down. So after they were trying to get mid lane priority, they go over to Baron. I don't have a problem with going for the Baron. I think that there's a lot of good reasons to try to make this play. You're basically just trying to pressure the enemy team into making a bad decision. My one issue with this is that they're on Soul Point. They could have stayed with mid priority for a little bit longer and then gone for the Infernal, because, I mean, that was just your other option. So let's play it out, and it's going slow. So obviously Team Liquid figures out, oh, the team ran towards the Baron. They're on Baron. So Baron's about half health. You do get a little bit of combat stats, so if TSM is able to take down Baron, they would have a better chance of winning this fight. They're up 6,000 gold currently. So this is how everything gets started. So Jhin is using his ultimate, and Jhin ultimate's pretty horrible against full health targets for the most part. Alfari's already at full rage bar, so if you're TSM, you're already thinking to yourself, like, we can't go towards a pit because we're going to take damage for free. Jin's ulting us. Nar's looking for a flank. We have Thresh. We have Orianna. We have Hecarim, just kind of in the middle of this fight. So they're trying to protect the AD carry, protect the mid laner. Huni got hit by a hook. Doesn't really matter that much because he's just going to Dominus and be able to get out of it normally. So that's fine. So what we see is Gnar successfully getting into the back line, is ulted out by Azir. So you have both top laners essentially removed from the fight because they were the first ones focused down. So Sterak's is popped. Then we get a Seraphine ultimate, and the Seraphine ultimate only hits one, but they get the flash out of it. The bullet time was okay, but you're not really getting much out of the bullet time. Then that's really the big problem. So. And this is one reason to think, like, if they picked Hecarim instead of Udyr first overall, would they have had a better team composition? It would have been more wombo combo-y, which is always fun. I don't know if it's necessarily better though, but just like these kinds of little things sometimes determine the game. So if you look at the bullet time, if it was just angled a little bit better, like aiming towards this wall, which it definitely could have, but that's kind of obviously micromanagey. But it is kind of just true that it would have been better, but that's fine. So the Orianna hits a good ultimate. Obviously, when you're stacking up on top of each other, you always run the risk of getting countered with an Orianna ultimate. Hecarim had his ultimate for a long time. They go 1-for-1 in the beginning, and this part of the fight is pretty unfortunate for TSM. So it's still about even. Like, there's Gnar going back down out of Mega, and then you would think that that's the end of this fight, but you would think incorrectly because TSM goes back in. And they go for Baron. So it's this is really just the big mistake that changes everything. They got out. All they had to do was run towards the dragon and try to get Infernal Soul off of that last fight, but instead they go for a Baron fight. And we'll just play this out because so it's at 6,500. Spica dies, and that's basically it. Like, you're not going to win the fight from that point. In this position, Team Liquid could have just as easily gone for the dragon immediately, but they try to finish off the Baron. And I respect TSM for trying to make this play. They sent Huni and Azir towards the dragon. I think that they should have sent them towards Baron because they know Baron's not being taken fast right now. So if they both go down into the Baron pit and try to force a fight again, I think they could have theoretically won that fight at the Baron pit. So that's really the question that you need to ask yourself. Would they have been able to win the game if they went the opposite direction? So now that you're TSM, you have a little bit more of you don't have an early game composition, but you do have Renekton, who theoretically falls off pretty hard. I don't think that it was really... I don't think this game really comes down to draft. It really just came down to execution and decision making. But it was a good game. They built up their lead. They had a winning position. They made a few bad mistakes around the 36 to 38 minute marks, and it cost them the game. So that's basically it for game one. In my opinion, there was no winning for TSM after that because they had the 6,000 gold lead that instantly drops down after taking a couple of towers, and then once they lose the positional battle against Team Liquid, that game is basically over. So that's that. Game two. Oh, this was okay. Yeah. So this game was stupid. So let's go through pick ban again. So we get the Udyr again. Don't have any problems with that. Then we get Tristana, very good champion right now. The Nidalee was a little bit of a question mark when the draft was going on because I'm always afraid of like the games where Nidalee just falls behind in the early game. So if they're able to draft a pretty strong early game team, or like there's not a lot of interactions between the junglers during the early game, then it's a good pick. Obviously Nidalee is still a good pick, Graves is still a good pick. It's just a lot of their matchups are not as good because if they fall behind and lose control of their jungle, it's going to feel really bad. Okay, then we have Aphelios. Then we have Thresh taken away. Both of those are fine picks. Then we get a Nautilus in return. Nautilus is fine. And this is really where the draft just goes off the hinges. So we get a Gangplank locked in. Gangplank's obviously a very good champion. Scales really well. So if you're TSM, you see Camille is banned. You see Aurelia and Jace are banned. Like, they're going to pick Gangplank a lot of the time here. And I even mentioned this going into this matchup. I figured Gangplank, Rumble, I figured both of those champions would make appearances just because of the fact that Huni was playing. So when you lock in Gangplank as Team Liquid, you're also taking a champion away from Huni. And they picked Lucian. I don't know how Lucian GP goes, but I think that it would have been better than what they ended up having happen. And then actually the last pick was a Ahri, not an Orianna. So I'll just let that switch over. But the Rumble pick, Rumble is a good champion for Huni. It's one of his best champions. It's one of the champions that he just like kind of made a name for himself on. And he's had incredible performances in these specific types of matchups where like his ultimate can turn a team fight. And I think that the fact that you're playing it against Tristana and Nidalee is okay, because that's one of the reasons why you pick someone like Rumble when his ultimate has the opportunity to kind of just shred multiple squishy members on the other team. Obviously, Tristana can jump out, but that gets rid of her W, and it a lot of the times will just end a fight before it even starts. But the Rumble against Gangplank, I don't think that's a good matchup. Like, I don't understand why they opted into that. It was kind of their decision to do that. I figured once they locked in Lucian, you send Lucian against GP, you try to trade for some of the barrels, you send some early attention top lane, just get some kind of random control mage in the mid lane, and protect your Aphelios. But they go from a late game team composition that's going to be able to protect Aphelios into just a really weird, not weird, but a much more difficult to execute team composition, because what's your engage? Your primary engage is obviously Udyr, because he's going to be able to get up there. Thresh can get into a fight and hit a hook or something, or like a flash flay. Or you can do use the Rumble ultimate to try to force a team fight to not happen. But it's just so much more difficult. Like when you have Aphelios and Thresh. Like if they locked in Seraphine here, I think they could have had another good Seraphine game from Power of Evil, which we'll see later on in the series. Like if that was already something that they prepared, I'm just surprised they didn't use it earlier on. Like just kind of bad. But they lost this draft really hard, and the early game went very bad for them as well. So like I'm not going to spend much time on this game. It was kind of just very one-sided. Let's see. Yeah, so this is when I knew the game was over. So Hooney's just kind of walking around in the river. He knows that his team is bot lane. His lane was shoved up. He was going to try to get a ward, but instead he's going to die. So Gangplank just basically walks back around and shoots him in the face, like the good Gangplank that he is. Yep. So I honestly, I went to my office and I was watching this game from my office because I was working on some other stuff, and the game was just over at that point. And then this is another spot. This was definitely the exclamation point when Lost just gets blown up basically instantly, like 3/4 of his health bar just instantly gone. So that game sucked.
For the Hecarim.
Okay, so this game we get a first pick Tristana. Tristana's a very good champion. I think that's completely fine. The Udyr was banned away this time. They go back into an Italy game. You get Leona. Leona's a pretty good champion. I'm surprised they picked the Leona. This was probably Team Liquid's worst draft. Just kind of disconnected. But you had the Tristana, you had Hecarim, you had Nautilus, which is another good champion. You're basically just trading the tank champions at this point. And then you also have the potential to overwhelm the Nidalee with Hecarim, which is always something that you actually do have to take into consideration. I know that after the good Nidalee game, you want to lock it in again and try to steamroll again, but it's not that easy. You get an Ezreal game. I think the Ezreal's pretty questionable. There's a lot of good AD carries in the meta right now. I don't think you really have to play Ezreal, and I'm not sure how good Ezreal actually is against Hecarim or Tristana. Tristana basically wins the laning phase pretty easily, I think. Yeah, so it was kind of weird. Then you get an Aatrox blind pick, which is weird to me. Good champion, just weird. You get Hooney on Camille, which he's a pretty good Camille, and this is the kind of carry matchup that I was talking about on the Infinity Edge podcast that we finally got to see. Then we get Seraphine. So the fact that they could play Seraphine makes their last draft even worse. Like that's really what annoyed me, because if you're a team that thinks Seraphine is good and you have an Aphelios, you should play the Seraphine. And now you have Seraphine, Hecarim. You could have had Hecarim in that last match too, instead of first picking the Udyr. So in the last draft, if you went Hecarim, trade it for the Udyr, then you lock in Thresh Aphelios, then the other team locks in whatever, Then they fourth pick Gangplank, U45, Seraphine, and something to just deal with the Gangplank in the laning phase. Obviously, you're not going to completely steamroll it, but just something that at least goes even. And then you can get into these late game team fights where the Aphelios is just going to outperform probably everybody else on the enemy team. Because that's what Aphelios does. If he gets there. Which he's done before. So, alright. Let's go back to this. So we'll look at the 26. So this is a pretty big fight. So it's an even match at this point. Just positionally, I think I'd rather be TSM at this point because Team Liquid basically has to use stuff to break down your position and get into the fight, and that's going to give Seraphine a lot of good opportunities to use her ultimate. Huni is just kind of being a distraction at this point. Get a good Seraphine ultimate onto 3. They ended up losing the dragon, which obviously is pretty annoying if you're Team Liquid, or if you're TSM. But now, now they're kind of trapped. Actually, I don't think they even get more kills off of this, do they? Leona dies, and they're not going to flash over the wall, but then they instantly go to Baron, right? Oh, yeah. So they just continue walking through the choke point. Team Liquid was on the wrong side of the map, so they had to walk all the way back to their side of the map. So they get that, then they get Baron, and then in my opinion the game is over at that point because like the most important gold threshold for me is 2,000. Most of the time when you get that 2,000 gold lead, you should be able to convert the game into a win. And then this game was a blowout. So let's just look at the last game. And right when we got to like the 12-minute mark, I just ordered food and stopped paying attention to League of Legends. So it's already 1,300.
This group is full on the Leona team. It's the time. Card has scoring team up. They're on the rate.
A lot of yelling. A lot of yelling. Okay. So TSM, they're down 800 gold, which is fine. They have the Infernal Dragon. Team Liquid is trying to get mid priority. Alfari is Gnar and is going to be able to jump into here. So you got to feel pretty bad if you're TSM, just a little bit afraid. He gets in, gets a 4-man ultimate. So once he hits that 4-man ultimate, the fight's over. Game's over. Not the game, but the fight's over. So TSM gives up 3 kills. Give up the Rift Herald. Actually, they don't give up the Rift Herald. Oh, but this was the Gragas game. So the Gragas pick was pretty horrible. The fact that he went AP. Like, I understand why you would do it, but he got completely dominated in laning phase because of the fact that Twisted Fate could just roam. Power of Evil was looking okay, but when you're getting fed as Seraphine, it doesn't really feel as good as a lot of other champions. Let's go. So at this point, what's the gold lead? Yeah, so it's a 3,000 gold lead. and TSM just kind of loses pretty easily from this point. So Gragas is really far behind. He's already basically 40 CS down. There were a lot of points in this game where Huni just didn't look like he was CSing well either. Like there was a top wave where he missed, I think, 2 or 3 melee minions with auto attacking incorrectly, and then missed a cannon minion as well. So that was pretty tilting to watch. TSM makes a good play for a dragon, but you're already 3,000 gold down, and they're gonna lose like a couple more towers pretty soon after this as well. But honestly, like this is the kind of stuff where, just from watching so much League of Legends, I know it may seem kind of defeatist to say that the game is over at this point, but it's a 4,000 gold lead, and your top laner is extremely far behind. Your mid laner is ahead, but doesn't do damage basically, and like, what are you gonna do? It's too difficult to play from this position. So that's basically it. TSM loses. Takeaways for the next day. So we have C9 against 100 Thieves, and C9 is obviously much better than 100 Thieves. I think that I don't expect 100 Thieves to win a match, or to win a game. Maybe they play some Twisted Fate, but Damonte's on the bench, so I doubt it. They're probably going to look for Ori, Azir, and just continuously put Ryoma onto like team fighting champions, and then just hope that they can win early game team fights, which you can definitely do against C9 because they do have some like questionable decision making, and like they're overly willing to take fights because they know that they're better than everybody. But even in that situation, I think that C9 just kind of steamrolls today. So that's basically it. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.